If you meet someone today, someone you haven't met before, a total stranger, would they like you? Do you think you can keep up a good conversation? Can you be interesting during a first conversation? Do you want to? Maybe you don't, and that's fair. But if you are an entrepreneur in the coaching industry, anyone around you could be a potential client. So maybe you do want to break the ice and start a conversation. If they're not a potential client, they could be a referral, someone to refer you to an ideal client. Agree? Now, you may have said that you can be interesting in the first conversation, but for how long? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour? If you didn't know the answer to one of those questions or to all of those questions, you will want to watch what I have to say in this video. And if you don't know how to be interesting, you have no idea how to be interesting during a first conversation, you will have to watch this video all the way. You must watch it. I'm Jack Tristao, and I help life coaches reach their $8,000 a month by selling their coaching services. And in order to sell your services, you need to build relationships, right? So there's a step in the middle of this whole process where most of my students get stuck, and they don't admit that they got stuck there because they take for granted the fact that they've been building relationships. They connect with people. That's why they decided to work in the coaching industry. They understand people, so they take that for granted. But once you understood your market, you know who you want to serve, you understand what you have to offer, you have to build a relationship, you have to connect with your audience, and then you convert these prospective clients into paying clients. And that's the process to start selling more and have the life you want. But there's a moment in the middle where you have to build relationships, and that's not as easy as we think. So when you strike up a conversation with someone you don't know, sometimes it feels weird and we don't know what to say. We run out of topics. And sometimes you participate in a networking event and you meet someone. You barely know them. You know them a little bit, but you don't want to keep the conversation because you don't know where the conversation is going, because you don't have control of it. If you did have control, you would know where it's going, and then you feel comfortable. So when you don't feel comfortable, you end up avoiding it, and you simply don't say a thing. Sometimes you sit next to someone you'd like to know. You know them a little bit. They could be like someone you've seen on a video, or someone who's a friend of a friend, but you don't know where the conversation is going to go. So you don't start the conversation and you remain silent. And that's normal because you don't want to go to that moment where everything becomes to be awkward. So you avoid the awkwardness by remaining silent. And that's normal. People do that. I used to do that all the time. I don't want to start this conversation because I don't know if I'm able to keep up with the conversation. I don't know if I want to be interesting because there's a lot of effort involved. So I'd rather just stay silent and just nod and say, how's it going, and be on my way. That's normally what we do. But if you learn how to feel comfortable and break the ice and remain interesting throughout the whole process, if that becomes an easy thing for you, then you become an interesting person to talk to. You know those people in school, and they were popular, they were charismatic, and then you met some others in college, and they were always popular and charismatic, and you felt like, come on, I want to, that's a thing. It's a gift. I thought that too. It's a gift, but it isn't. They know way. There's a technique, there's a strategy, a tool we use that helps us become more interesting. And it's all about the interest we have in others, like how to be genuinely interested in what they have to say. So there's a technique called break the ice stacking, and we're going to go over this one. today. In this one applies to networking in person and online. So obviously some things are different when you're doing that online, but actually it's easier to use this strategy when you're doing networking online, when you're breaking the ice with people you don't know on social media, for example. That's a great way to build relationship with people you don't know online as well. But this one works for you meeting people in person too. If you go to networking event, if you know someone, if you meet someone at a bar or maybe a get together at your friend's house, and you want to be interesting and you want to ask the right questions, and you never know if you're asking the right questions, if you're asking enough questions, or maybe you're not asking the wrong ones. There's a sweet spot in the middle, and then when you find that sweet spot, people will be interested in listening to you more, and then you become someone nice and cool to be around. And that's the secret to build relationships, to make things easier. So there's a sequence of topics that we learn to ask the person that we're talking to. And as we start asking questions, we talk about ourselves. Obviously, it's not only asking, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. But the secret is to be in control. You decide where that conversation is going. You take the lead. You decide which direction the conversation is taking. And that's the secret, because if you don't have that control, you feel that you're losing it, and then you may run out of topics to talk about, and they feel the same way. So you know what, let's just go separate ways, and we're not going to be friends because we don't know how to converse, we don't know how to talk about interesting things. So we're going to go over this technique now. I want you to start memorizing some objects, and the first object to memorize is a name tag. Name tag. You imagine the object, and I'm gonna have you piling them up, each object on top of each other. So the first object to memorize is a name tag. And what does a name tag remind us? Name, right? Name. So obviously this one is not used as often in the online world, because when you start a conversation with someone you don't know online and you want to build a relationship, because you want them to trust you so that you can show them what you have to offer, and that's how you build a relationship to in the end sell your services. So this first one is the name tag, the first object, a name tag. But obviously you don't use that in the online world. You use in the real world. It's a name tag. The next object I want you to memorize and put on top of the name tag is a hammer. A hammer. So we're going to memorize all the objects first, and then we're going to talk about them. It's a hammer. So we have the name tag, and then, yes, a hammer. On top of the hammer, we have a house. A house. It could be a small house, it could be a big house. It's your imagination, and that will help you memorize those objects, and you don't have to feel trapped and running out of topics to talk about. You always have those objects in your head, and it's stored right there. What's the first one? The name tag. The second one is the hammer, and on top of the hammer we have a house. Okay, so on top of the house, maybe on the roof, you have a baby. It could be a boy, it could be a girl. It's just a baby. It's your imagination. So we have, what's the first one? Name tag, and then we have the hammer, and then we have the house, and then the baby. So on top of the baby, we have an airplane. I always like to imagine the baby holding like a toy, an airplane toy, but it could be a big airplane. It could be a small airplane. It's just an airplane. That's the object. What's the first one? name tag, hammer, house, baby, and then airplane. On top of the airplane, there's another object. The next one is a football, or it could be a soccer ball. You choose. Some places we call that sport soccer, in other places we call it football. So we're talking about a soccer ball or a football. What's the first one? Name tag, hammer, and then the house, and then we have the baby, right? And then the airplane, and the next one is the football. And after the football, on top of the football, we have a stamp. A stamp, you know, the collector's stamp, those stamps that we use to post on letters. A stamp. What's the first one? Name tag. Then we have the hammer. Yes, the house, the baby, the airplane, the ball, and now the stamp. On top of the stamp, you with me? On top of the stamp, we have the thinker. You know that statue of that man thinking? We call it the thinker. So that's the next object, a statue. We're going to call the word the thinker. So we have, what's the first one? We have the name tag, and then we have to repeat all of them. That's the way to memorize it. The name tag, and then we have the hammer, the house, we have the baby, the airplane, ball, stamp, and the thinker. The next object on top of the thinker is a trophy. A trophy. Trophy. This is a trophy. And we're going to repeat all of them again. Name tag, hammer, house, baby, yes, airplane, ball, stamp, the thinker, and the trophy. And now we have the last one, the 10th object. The 10th object is a target. Just that, a target. Let's repeat all of them again. Start from the beginning. Name tag, hammer, house, baby, airplane, ball, stamp, the thinker, trophy, and what's the last one? What's the last one? A target. Okay, so we're going to start from the beginning, down at the bottom. The first one is a name tag. We talked about that like 5 minutes ago. What does a name tag remind us? The name. So when you're breaking the ice with someone, when you're starting a conversation with someone, you have this structure now to follow. And the first thing to talk about or to ask the person is what? Of course, the name. And like I said, it's not the same if you're doing that online, because you see the name and there's the name and the last name. If you're sending a direct message on Instagram or on Facebook, there's the name and last name right there. But it's not about asking their name. It's about talking about the name too. So this object helps you remember to talk about their name. So I always like to ask their name. Ask the name. What's your name? Sometimes I like to introduce myself first. I say, hi, I'm Jack. What's your name? And if you say, hi, I'm Jack, it's natural. That's what we do. You know, we know how to do that. That's the easy thing. I'm Jack. They automatically say their name. I'm Jack. I'm Sophia. I'm Matthew. I'm Paul. I'm Jose. I'm Jack. Or you can say, I'm Jack, what's your name? And if you're breaking the ice and starting a conversation on Facebook, you can talk about, or Instagram or whatever platform you're using, you can talk about their name. I like to ask about the orange of their last name. And mind this specific problem that you might encounter. If you talk about their last name and you feel that that's not something they enjoy talking about, just leave it. You want them to be interested in listening to you. You want them to feel comfortable, to be enjoying the time they're having with you, conversing with you. So if you notice that you asked about their name, they're orange, is that German? Oh, that's nice. I know someone with that last name, and I thought it wasn't German. It was, I don't know, French or whatever. And if they say, yeah, I don't know, it's if they don't want to talk about that, it's okay. It's you using this strategy to break the ice and to keep the conversation interesting. You want them to be interested in the questions you're asking. So be careful with the name. But that's great. I have had that. I've had conversations with people using this technique. I call it the break the ice stacking, because we're stacking objects. I've used this technique in the past with people where we were talking about the first object for like 10 minutes, discussing origins of their name, of my name, my last name, their last name, or their first name, and that happens pretty commonly. So it's a good way to have something to talk about. Okay, name. Careful though, if they don't like their first name either. Like you notice something about because you want to compliment them. You want to pay a compliment on their name. If it's a pretty name, be genuine, be truthful, right? Be authentic. If it's a pretty name, you say, that's a nice name. Wow, it's pretty. I do that all the time when I see a pretty name. But sometimes if you notice that they're not too excited about their names, just leave it. Move to the next object, just the way you do with the last name. What's the next object? The name tag, and the next one is the hammer. Okay. When you break the ice with someone, you talk about their names, you introduce yourself. The next topic is work, right? What does a hammer remind you? Work. You're going to talk about work, what they do for a living. Again, if they enjoy talking about that, you continue the conversation on that topic. If they avoid the subject, if they, in between jobs, and so what do you do for a living? I'm not working at the moment. It's okay. You can ask, what do you want to do? What is the kind of work you're looking for? What do you want to do? What do you plan on doing? What's the future for you? If they have an idea of what they want to do in the future, they will get excited about this question. If they've been struggling to find a job, and that's a subject that brings pain, you don't talk about that. You ask the question because you're trying that, but if it's something they don't feel comfortable with, you just move on. Simple as that. But then you have this structure to talk about things that they may be interested, they may be, they might like to talk about. So that's the second object. Careful with this one, because sometimes we get stuck on that object. People go on and on and on and on. They want to talk about what they do. They want to sell you, and that's not the idea here. The idea is you in control of the conversation. So that's the hammer. What is the next object? We talked about the name tag, and next one was hammer. What's the next object on top of the hammer? The house. What does a house remind us? Yes, where they live. And you can ask them, so where do you live? And if it's the same city where you are currently living, then you can talk about maybe a neighborhood. Where do you live here? What neighborhood? I live in the west side of the city, or the south. And then you discuss, is it nice there? Because I've been there, but I've never lived there. I know some people who live there, and they talk good things about that place. You ask them if they like it. If they don't, what is a good place that you wanted to live in? Remember, always talking about the good stuff. If they go on about complaining, if they start complaining about the place they live, you don't talk about that. That's not the goal here. The goal is to keep them interested in talking about you. So you want to connect for the right reasons. You don't want to connect for the wrong reasons. So you always keep the good energy, always asking some about things that they like to talk about. So that's the house object. You can also talk about where they've come from, where they are from originally, where they were born, and obviously you're always sharing your stuff too. So I was born in maybe a different country, and they came to your country because when they were little, and then, oh, that's interesting. What was life like where you lived? And maybe they don't like to talk about their past. Again, move on. Don't talk about that. Go to the next object. So that's the object house. What did we have on top of the house? It was a baby. Yes. So now, what does a baby remind us? Kids, family in general, right? So do you have kids? And then obviously you always talk about yourself too. I don't have kids of my own, but I want to have kids. Or maybe you do have kids, and then you say, oh, I have a boy and a girl. Do you have kids? And they say yes. And then you ask their names. You ask their names. Oh, what are their names? I don't know, Julia and Christopher. And then you ask their age. So how old is Julia and how old is Christopher? Always mention their names, because now you know them. This is an opportunity to actually connect with them. They were the ones to choose their kid's name. And then you want to repeat their names, because it's nice to hear someone pronounce the name that you chose for your kid. And then you say, so how old is Julia and how old is Christopher? Oh, Julia is 9 and Christopher is 12 or whatever. And that's a great way to build rapport when you talk about what they love. Normally, parents love their kids, right? 99% of the cases. So that's you taking advantage of that moment and repeating their kids' names. That works wonderfully. So that's the baby object. What is the next object on top of the baby? It was an airplane. Now, this is an easy one. You talk about traveling, and I don't know anyone who doesn't like to travel. Maybe 99.99% of people in the whole world like to travel. And you talk about traveling. So what is do you like traveling? Have you been traveling? Do you travel when you go on vacation? And you talk about that. That's super nice. And then is there a place where you've been to that you felt it was remarkable? What's the craziest place you've ever been in your life? And then you share the place that you've been that you felt that was the best one. And then you talk about that. You could spend, 10 minutes, 15 hours talking about that very subject, because it's so interesting. Because people are happy when they go on holidays, right? Or even if they go, if they travel for business, they enjoy going to other places. If it's like a trip that they have to do every week, it's not as enjoyable, but you can talk about the good things that they get to do when they're visiting a different place. Simple as that. After the airplane, we have what? The football. And now we talk about sports. So it's easy. Do you like sports? Do you follow sports? Is there something you like in particular? And then you share what you like to do. Always remember this. Sometimes when you're talking about all these objects and all these questions, you may feel that they're not opening up. And that's normal, super normal. Actually, it's it's natural for them to feel a little standoffish when you're trying to talk about their lives. And the easiest way to get someone to open up to you is to talk about yourself. So this is the first thing I do. If I don't feel that they're opening up, I talk about myself rather than asking the questions. I say, I've been to a different place last month or last year. I traveled, 2020 we didn't travel much, but I visited this place and that place and it was amazing. Do you have a place that you always like, or you've been planning to go to? Again, if they haven't been traveling much, you ask, is that a place where you want to go, like in the next year or so, maybe in the next few months? That's a great way to engage, talking about traveling. So also, if they don't feel too comfortable talking about themselves, if you feel that they're a bit closed still, you can pay a compliment. Like I said in the beginning, you can talk about their names, and if it's a pretty name, you compliment it on it. You compliment them on it. That's a pretty name. Also, when with kids' names, oh, pretty names. I like that. Julia, beautiful name. You can do that too. That helps strengthen the relationship that you're building with that person. And again, this conversation may take 5 minutes to go all the way to the top with all the 10 objects, or maybe it could last 6 months. Like I've had clients share with me experiences they've had trying out this technique. And I remember one student in one of my courses, it was a live seminar, and we were teaching this technique, and he said that, oh, Jack, now I realize that I've been visiting some prospects. It was like a bank manager. I've been visiting some clients to try and get them to join our bank, to open an account with us, and it's not going. Now I realize that I've been talking about half of the objects. I've stopped at the baby object or the airplane object, and I've never actually pushed through and kept going to talk about more intimate topics. And that's the key here. When you ask about things that they really like to talk about, maybe they want to talk about hobbies. If you haven't asked about that, there's no way they're going to guess that you want to talk about that, because you are the one in control. You are leading the conversation. So we were talking about sports. Do you follow sports? Do you have a favorite team? Careful here. Again, sports teams. Some people are fanatics and they're crazy about their team, their sports team, and that may cloud their judgment, and you might lose them when you start talking about something that they're crazy about. So you don't want to go there. You want to keep in control. So maybe you avoid asking about favorite teams, and unless you feel comfortable, you know that they're not going to go crazy about that. So you can ask that question. What is the next object after the ball? What's the next one? The stamp, right? Collector's stamps. And that is a topic where we talk about hobbies. Is that a hobby that you enjoy? Do you have any hobbies? And then you share yours. If they some people, they don't know how to talk about this subject because they don't have any hobbies. They don't know what a hobby is. They haven't had time to actually take on a hobby. So you ask them about things that they like to do. That's it, like activities. What do you like to do on the weekend when you have a free time? And they might go like, I just sit down and read a book, or I watch TV, or I watch some Netflix. That's a hobby. If they think it is, if they feel it's a good thing, it's a pleasure to be doing that, if it's a leisure time activity, then it's a hobby, right? Who are you to judge that? You are the one having them, getting them to be interested in your conversation. So if it's a hobby, it's a hobby. You talk about that, share yours, and it's interesting. You'd be surprised at how many new things you'd learn from people when they start talking about what they like to do. I remember I had someone in a class when I was teaching this technique, and they were collecting pens. And this lady, it was a young girl, she had over 8,000 different pens, like normal pens, like this one. But obviously she had like thousands of this one here, or different types of varieties of this specific one, but she had thousands of pens, and we talked about that, and then they started to talk about that very subject. Oh, that's super cool. So how do you categorize pens? Is that like how's that work? And she got excited talking about that. That's what you want. And then I actually interrupted and I said, see, that's what I wanted from you. And she was like, oh, you got me. Yeah, I wanted you to get excited. I wanted you to talk about what you enjoy doing. That's the hobby. That's me in control. That's me being interested. That's me being interesting to you. Now they want to talk more with me because I always ask the right questions. Right, there was the stamp. What's the next one on top of the stamp? The thinker. So the thinker is about profound topics. We want to talk more about books. You want to talk about what they did what courses they took. If they had like a major, PhD, anything that involves knowledge and information, and you can talk about, maybe I wouldn't go there, but you can talk about politics. I wouldn't talk about religion, and like you wouldn't talk about sports teams. It's not a place you want to go because you might lose control of the conversation, and this is where the place where you want to be in control. That's why you're doing this. So don't talk about politics unless you really know where you're stepping into, or religion. But that's, if you were to talk about those subjects, it will be now, in this object, the thinker. So you talk more. See, this is we're getting to the top of this tower here. This big stack of objects, and now we're getting more deep into the conversation. Now people are sharing things that they really believe in, their beliefs, their faith, and now we know more. We know each other more profoundly. So that's the thinker object. What's the next one? On top of the thinker, come on, you remember that one? Yes, the trophy. What does the trophy remind us? Accomplishments, right? Achievements. So you ask them what is the biggest achievement they've had in life? Achievements, accomplishments, things like maybe like the marriage, maybe it's the degree they got, maybe it's just a trip they took years ago. That was the biggest achievement in my life. And then you talk about that. You see people opening up and being super excited and enjoying the conversation with you because now you're asking questions about what they really like. Obviously, they are proud of the achievements they've had in the past in their lives. So that's the trophy object. What is the next one? The last one is the target. Now, this object here, the target, obviously, we're going to talk about goals, what they want in life, what are their plans for their lives. And this object may come up at any time during your conversation. And this is super common. You ask them their names. You introduce yourself. Hey, how's it going? My name is Cheryl. I'm Michael. Oh, I'm Michael. Oh, my brother. You talk about the name. You discuss a little bit. You move on to the next one, which is the hammer. And then you talk about what they do for a living. And they tell you that they're doing this, but they actually wanted to do that. So that's when they bring in the target onto the current conversation, the conversation you're having at that time, in the beginning, in the very first few minutes. That's people bringing the target. So that, well, all the objects, they can appear throughout the conversation, no matter where you're going with the process. It's normal, it happens. This structure is for you to have a place to go. So you have guidelines, you have this path to walk, and then you know where you're going. If you run out of topics, you just you remember the next object in your mind. Okay, so on top of the baby, we have the airplane. So have you been traveling much? I know it's not a thing we've been doing lately because the whole COVID thing. So that's you not running out of topics to talk about. This is so powerful, so powerful. And you can do this. You can use the object number 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, and then you connect, and then you have them trusting you, and then you have a relationship, a strong relationship. You can go all the way to the 10th object and still feel that they're not opening up to you. You are the one to measure that. You will feel whether they're opening up, whether you have their trust, and now you have a bit of a relationship with them. And then you move to the next step, which is letting them know how you can help them. But this is the best way. I've been using this for years, and I do that all the time. So I never run out of topics to talk about when I'm breaking the ice, when I'm striking up a conversation with someone I don't know, a total stranger. I have someone in the elevator. If they start talking and I feel that I want to continue the conversation, like I asked in the beginning of the video, do you want to? Maybe you don't. But if you want to know that person, if you want them to be knowing what you can offer, if they could be a potential client or maybe just someone to refer you to an ideal client, maybe you want to know them. And in order to do that, in order to avoid that awkward moment where you don't know what to say, you follow this structure. You go step by step, object by object, and then you get to the end. Now, I want you to experiment with this technique tomorrow. I want to do this. You can do that. I've had people do that with their spouse to test it. Obviously, they know their spouse's name, they know what they do for a living, they know all that. But they can follow the structure, trying to remember the next object. You can try that with your spouse, with your brother, your sister, or friend. But I want you to start doing that with your prospective clients, people you want to become your clients online. Bring them to a conversation. Send a friend request. Maybe you're already doing that with people. Maybe you're already networking with people you don't know. You're getting to know them, but you don't know how to be interesting. Ask the right questions. Ask questions that they'll be enjoying to answer. Ask questions they'll be they'll feel comfortable and excited about the answer they'll give you. That's the key. You get them to talk about good things. If they go on about something they don't like, you are the one to help them get out of there. They get stuck complaining, bad energy. You are the one to bring them back to a safe place, talking about things that they like, they enjoy doing or remembering, like a trip they took. So when they think about you, they're gonna remember a good moment they had with you, because you were the one helping them get out of that energy they've always getting themselves into. Does that make sense? I hope it did. Now, tomorrow you try out this thing and you start breaking the ice and building relationships with people online on your social network. It does work, and I've been doing that for years. And I've had people that didn't know me get to know me in a much more intimate level, and I've known people, and I got to know people that I didn't know much, and I created in relationships and long-lasting relationships because I was always being interesting to talk to.